Hi everyone, this is Sophie or Kuroko here, and I'm here celebrating my 3.5-year anniversary on this account on YouTube, so yay! And also somehow over the years I've gotten 800 subscribers, and I'm not sure how I managed to because I barely upload on this account, but thank you very much for all the support and for everyone who's been following my work. To say thank you, I wanted to upload some of the resources that I've made over the years, specifically magic circles because I've drawn a lot of them. I really enjoy drawing them, and a few people have said that it would be helpful if I uploaded them as sort of a general resource. A couple of rules for using these magic circles. They're free for personal or commercial use, so you can go ahead and use them for like commissions or any other work as well. You're free to edit them if you want because all the AAP files are included along with the circles, so if you don't like certain shapes you can get rid of them, you can change them. It would be nice if you credited me when you use them, but it's not required, so especially if you've made a lot of edits on them, you can pretty much just go ahead. The only thing I will ask that you don't do is please don't redistribute these anywhere else, and please don't just take the files and try to sell them for a profit. Basically, don't be a jerk, but other than that, they're pretty much free for all. So in the rest of the video, I'll explain a little bit about each of these files and show you where I originally used the circles. I'll also go over basically how the file is formatted because some of these are a bit old and it might be confusing. Just let me know if you have any questions at all, and thank you again. Whoos! Alright, so this is the first circle that I have. It's the first one I've ever made, and I call it a tree circle because if you look closely at this final circle here, that thing in the middle is supposed to be a tree. Maybe it doesn't look like a tree, but that's what it was supposed to be. This circle, because it was my first circle and because it's just complicated, is a little bit of a mess. So the center tree over here, that entire circle, is its own composition. You can toggle it open here, and the tree I basically just drew out of shapes, and then there's two different sort of circle layers. And then you have 3 subcircles. Each of these 3 circles over here is a subcircle. So subcircles 1, 2, and 3. Oh, that's the center one over here. And you can go and change them. Right now all 3 of course are the same. Then you have the main circle itself. There's the big outline, and then the inner outline actually refers to the sort of one that has the diagonal lines across it in the middle. And then there's the center circle over here, the connector strips, these over here, and the stage sort of setting over here. For those of you that recognize this circle was originally used in SCB round 2, I believe, for the Waning Crescent water jug song that we did. And I also used it again in FCCB. You can animate each of the sections with like a trim paths or something, but I did that in my original video, but it's kind of annoying because there's a lot of separate parts. So this circle might be best to just put in the background. But you can play with it, and hopefully it'll be useful for someone.
本ってなんだっけ普通の相手なんだっけ僕は今日も僕に問いかけ
This second circle is the classic circle because it looks like the sort of like magic circle that you might see out of like an occult book. And it was originally used in SCB Round 4 for OTN's Rising Hope. And it's got some triangles, it's got some circles. It's actually relatively simple in comparison to the tree. But the important part is that there's 3 circles here that are identical. So they're on a separate comp, and there's actually 2 versions I made. I like the 6-sided star one better, but I originally also had an 8-sided version. So you can choose either one. The base circle is this thing in the middle, and the final circle adds 2 more like circle subsections in the middle, but you can feel free to turn those on or off. And you can animate all these parts. I actually believe I didn't ever animate this circle, but you can make the triangle spin and everything. Other things is that this was back when I really liked making a glow on my circles. So a lot of them had this unchecked layer styles. If you check it on, you'll see that I had a white glow effect on them, but you can just leave that out, or just apply a glow over the whole final circle when you drag this comp into something else. That's all for this one, I think. So, speaking of Rising Hope, those of you who actually watched the anime probably know that Mahoka circles do not look like classic magic circles. So I went back and did some research, and this is my attempt to recreate a sort of simplified version of the Flying CAD that Miyuki makes in one of the episodes, I think. So this is a complicated circle that I probably didn't split up very well, so I tried to help out by like sort of doing this animation in sequence for everybody already. But if you want to go faster or slower, or if you want to animate it in a different way, you would probably have to go into the layers to find out where everything is. And I'm really sorry about that. But yeah, when I made this, I wasn't being super organized, so there's a lot of groups in here that might not be obvious immediately. But it might be useful to some of you who plan to do songs from that anime series and want to sort of base it off there. And that's about it for this circle. It's a steampunk circle! So I made this a while ago when I wanted to like play with steampunk things, and it's basically sort of like a ruler or on the outside, and then it's got a bunch of pointy things and then a gear in the middle because steampunk things. If you ever do feel like changing this when you use it, the gears are a little bit bold and stylistically different from the outside. I think it works for steampunk things, but maybe if you layered like a metal texture over it or something, it could look cooler that way. But the most important part of this is how to make the gears turn. So for the big gear, it's actually pretty simple. You just open up the rotation and then you can rotate it because it's centered. But for the small gear, it's a little bit trickier. So the small gear is actually already anchored to the center as well. So when you toggle the rotation, you can make it rotate around the center point like this. But then, of course, we also want the teeth to be rotating around. So in order to do that, you actually have to open up the small gear, go into the contents, and then group 1 is the teeth. I should probably rename that. I will try to do that before I actually post this AEP. And under stroke and dashes. So this is the long sort of series. You have to open group 1, stroke 1, dashes, and then what you're trying to animate is the offset of those dashes. So you're animating the offset, and that turns the gear around actually. So that's how you animate this one. It's probably not the best solution, so I'll find a new one if I can, but right now that's how you animate this particular circle. And yeah, hopefully someone finds it useful.
最悪キャンプの手トリガーを引いていいって考えてた見て Something was fucked in my mind 眠れない夜でただまだバズ
打ち抜く光のように囚われた私を照らして Shooting star 降り注ぐ星は
Ooh, this is the cyber circle. You may recognize this one because I've used this one in LSO round 2 with Symphonia. So I worked on that with Soke and CL, and this was the circle that appeared a couple of times in that video. It was used as the floor on the chorus, and it's a vaguely cyber themed circle. It's probably better to look at this in 100%. But it's got a few things here. It's got some lines. It's got a lot of empty space for your like cyber-ish text in the background maybe. And there's 2 versions of it. This is the bigger version. It's got these sort of lines on the outside. And then there's a smaller version which is basically this part in the middle but simplified. So this is a smaller version of the circle. All the parts you can animate, they can spin around, and that's basically it. Constellations. This last circle that I have for you guys is a little bit more complicated than the other ones, mostly because there's a whole bunch of different versions. So basically this circle has one base version. It has all the astrological symbols around, and it's sort of a star themed type of circle. But I also have text and constellations for every different horoscope. So if you open up the different versions folder, there are 12, one for every sign. And the constellations are drawn with the size of the circles corresponding to the brightness of the stars, and there's a name up here. So in order for this to run, you do need a few fonts, and I've included those fonts in the folder. The really critical one is Symbola because you need it in order for all of these horoscope signs to display properly. This one also uses a Trapcode Particular plugin, so if you don't have Trapcode Particular, that's okay. The only part of this that won't work for you is the background, where you see there's a star field here. The stars are generated with Trapcode Particular. If you don't have Trapcode Particular, then you can just replace the background with some sort of background of your own, or maybe just not even use a background. If you don't use the background, it's just a white circle like this. And there's also one version with the preview of the full background on there, only over the circle, or you could just not use the background at all. There's one more thing included in this circle that's not obvious, and it's this layer right here. This layer says Flower in Bloom, and it's basically a shape layer that I created early on, but it turns out that I think it makes the circle too complicated, but it might be pretty if you're trying to transition in. So the Flower in Bloom basically looks like this. And if I put on the background, you can see sort of the actual bits of the sort of flower actually extend outside the circle. So you can animate that in and use that sort of like a transition into your circle. Or if you're not using any of the constellations, it also looks okay like this. But if you have the constellations, then it ends up being sort of a mess, which is why I don't have it on. But if you want to use it, it is there. Don't turn this circle on. This circle is only here to cut out this one over here. So just leave this off, and you can choose which version of the background you want, or if you just don't want the background at all. And that's everything about these circles, I think.